Whoops.
Oh, that's
Okay, we turn the cameras around the other way for the lights better. I do not know what is going on with Facebook. I cannot go live on Facebook right now, which is really extremely annoying. YouTube being beautifully behaved, as is Periscope, but nope, I cannot get live on We Are Vaxxed at all.
That's so strange.
It makes me angry. I'll try one more time. So, must have been Liza. All went wrong when Liza did her story. It's all her fault. But yeah, I can't go live on no, it's not going to let me. So I don't know what to suggest. Let me see if I can, just out of interest, let me just see if I can go live on. Wait one sec. I'll just see if I can do an experiment here. This is how I'll know if we're being censored. Okay, where's my phone? While you're waiting, Pip, you can have a little look at that. Woohoo! Vaccinations, someone gave us this, are the mark of the beast. That's what the kind of literature that we get given. Let me just see, this will tell us. I'm going to try and go live on Autism Mothers and see if it's just a... If I can go live on Autism Mothers, you know that this is...
Oh, Charlotte's pretty censored. Charlotte keeps everything down.
Might just be Facebook completely.
It could be that too. Yeah.
I can't even get on Facebook right now. Okay, yeah, John is working away in the background. It's very hot on this bus.
Is that fan too noisy? Is Billy in there? Or are you okay with that sound?
No, the fan is fine. It's
Yeah.
just, has Billy got no clothes on? It's just that if he comes out, he'll be live. All right, well, Facebook won't even let me go on to Facebook at all, so I guess this is just what it is for now. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
It's just annoying.
Yeah.
Okay, right.
Okay.
Let's just get on with the story, and I do apologise that we can't go live on Facebook with you, which is actually our largest audience, but I'm sure that someone on Periscope will post this on Facebook for us so that our peeps can see it. Tell us your name, please.
My name's Tara.
And how many children have you got?
I have one son. He's 5. He is the vaccine injured one, or through learning of his vaccine injury, found out a bunch of answers for myself. But because of his vaccine injury that I didn't realize was a vaccine injury till about 2 years into his life, we decided we didn't want any more kids because it was just so difficult. So
when you didn't think it was vaccine injury, what did you think it was?
Well, people told me boys just develop later, they have a harder time. They didn't really have any answers for me. They just said that, you know, he'll walk and talk and do everything when he's ready to. He didn't talk until he was after 17 months old. He didn't walk until he was over a year old, or didn't crawl till right about a year old, and then a month later finally started walking. So he was delayed a little, but not drastically enough for doctors to say, well, there's something wrong. It was just, he was a very fussy, emotional baby, and it was very difficult on us as a family. And so we were just like, he's just difficult, and we need to focus all our attention on him.
Right, so now that you know that vaccines were a
Yes.
major cause, let's go back and talk about when you were pregnant with him.
Mm-hmm.
Did you get any vaccines?
I did not. Well, not technically. At 10 weeks, when I was pregnant with him at 10 weeks, I started bleeding. I thought I was having a miscarriage. I'm B negative blood type, so I go to my doctor, and of course they immediately shoot me with the Rogam shot. I learned much later that had thimerosal in it. So about 10 weeks gestation, he got a dose of thimerosal. But the pregnancy was fine. I was very sick, lots of morning sickness. I should have at that point started questioning things, because they gave me medication for morning sickness, and I was hesitant to take it because I'm pregnant, you know. So I would take it on occasion, but I was looking for more natural alternatives to my morning sickness. So I didn't take it all the time. I just didn't want to put that in my body when I'm growing a child. So the pregnancy was normal. At one point, I don't remember if they asked me about the flu shot or the DTaP while I was pregnant with them, but I was with a midwife, and I just said, no, that's all right. And she didn't give me a hard time about it. So they did ask me about it, but I declined.
So the dark side out there, the trolls, they would like
Yes.
you to call you an anti-vaxxer.
Of course.
But were you an anti-vaxxer?
No, I was hesitant. I wasn't anti, because obviously I got him a Hep B shot at birth, which is where this story is going. But let's see, he was born in 2012. In 2007, I joined the military, and I got the whole
Shebang.
Don't even know what it was, what all of them were, because, well, first I was up to date. Then I joined the military, joined the Air Force. We basically were lined up in a line with 3 or 4 doctors on each side of us. Take a step forward, shoot. Take a step forward, shoot. That afternoon, my health collapsed. We were running, and the only thing I can describe it as is I had tunnel vision. I could hear my TI yelling at me to keep running, keep running. I couldn't respond. I couldn't do anything except put one foot in front of the other. I thought it was stress. She finally pulled me out of the lineup and said, you have to go to the medics. There's something wrong. So they kept me in medical hold for a month, trying to diagnose a heart issue. They were convinced I had a cardiac event of some sort. Couldn't find any issues. Finally said that I had exercise-induced asthma, and they discharged me. They had no answers. So I wasn't the anti-vaxxer. I mean, I followed the rules. I was fully vaccinated as a child.
Do you have the rights to your medical records while you were in the military?
I don't know. I didn't ask.
Because it would be interesting to know what on earth you got in your arm.
Well, I mean, I requested them once I started going down this rabbit hole. I did request all of my records, my medical records from the military. And it shows my dental exams, it shows my health physicals, it shows them trying to diagnose a heart event or asthma. It does not show that I had any shots. It does say that they tested me prior to entry into the military, and I had antibodies for rubella, mumps, and measles. But I'm sure during that lineup of shots, MMR was one of them. But no, it's not listed. And I called the military essentially, and I said, I got shots. They're not on my record. And they said, we sent you everything.
So end of
Discussion.
Yeah.
That's it.
I mean, I feel like if you sign up to the military, you sign your body away.
You do. And I mean,
You're
I
a
knew
lab
I
rat.
was committing to something. I didn't think about, the shots or anything. In fact, I had a boyfriend prior to joining the military who has mouth and teeth issues, and he swears all day long that it's attributed to the anthrax vaccine. He says that has broken down his enamel on his teeth and everything. And I had that information prior to joining the military, but I was just like, shoot me up. I'm joining the military. I'm doing something for my country. My body can take it. I'm healthy. Didn't even think about the shots.
So you go on and you
Yes.
have, show me some of these pictures. What's going on here?
Okay, well,
Don't jump too far. Sorry.
yeah, so let's start. He was an
You go.
emergency C-section. His due date was August 4th. He was an emergency C-section on August 3rd, so just the day before his due date. He
Yeah.
wasn't a preemie. The day I had the emergency C-section, I felt like something was wrong. I didn't know why, I just felt like something was wrong. And I was trying to distract myself from it because I was just being an over-concerned mom, but it just seemed like something was wrong. So I went to the grocery store to distract myself, and while I'm in the middle of the grocery aisle, the frozen grocery aisle, I broke out into a sweat and got nauseous. And so I went straight to my doctor, and they hooked me up, and there was decreased fetal movement and non-reassuring something or other, so they rushed me in for a C-section. Well, of course, in this process, I'm just signing paperwork, get my baby out of me, save him. They take me in for the C-section, and I see them take him out of me and take him over to a table, and they're working on him, and I can hear them saying, no breath sounds, no heart, there was nothing. And so I'm just laying there waiting to hear him cry, because you see on the movies, a mom who has a C-section, she hears the baby cry and everything's good. no crying. There's a whole team of doctors working on him, and about 2 minutes in, I hear a very, very weak cry, and I was like, okay, he's alive, and they rush him out of the OR, and my husband went with them. Well, the doctor came in once they got me sewed up and said, he's not thriving, his blood sugars aren't regulating, we have to put him on oxygen, all this stuff. We don't have the facility here to take care of him. We're going to transfer him about an hour and a half away to a NICU that can handle his situation. So they sent an ambulance from an hour and a half away. They picked him up. I literally got to see my son for 30 seconds before they wheeled him out, because he was in this plastic box with oxygen and everything, and they brought him into me. I reached over, of course I've just had a C-section, I can't get up or anything. I reach over and touch his hand for 30 seconds before they take him to the ambulance and take him down the mountain, because this was in Boone, North Carolina, and they took him about an hour and a half away.
Did your husband go with that baby?
No, he stayed with me. The next day he did go down the mountain to be with him, but when they got him to the NICU, the EMTs called us and said, this was the middle of the night. He was born at 4:57, so I was already asleep trying to recover from the C-section. They called and they said, put your husband on the phone, because we know that you probably aren't comprehending this, but he had 2 or 3 seizures on the way down the mountain, and we need permission to do a spinal tap. And of course, at this point, I'm like, how did I break my baby? I'm taking this all on. How did I not take care of my baby well enough during pregnancy that he's having to go down the mountain? So, of course, I didn't know at that point they'd given him a Hep B shot in the OR. All I knew was they were trying to save him.
Sorry, can we just stop a second?
Yeah.
So, when your baby is struggling to breathe,
he wasn't even breathing at the point
he wasn't even breathing. They gave him a Hep B shot.
Quick, get it in him so we can charge for it. That's what I feel from the write-up that they gave me. I feel like it was, okay, we can't charge for it if it's a baby who dies. Or who's dead before we issue it. So let's just give him the shot before he's gone. Yeah.
I can't even understand how that could even happen, that a Hep B shot can be given to a baby who can't even basically breathe on his own.
Well, and there could be some questions like, well, are you sure they gave it to him before he started breathing? Are you sure it wasn't later? The paperwork from the hospital says, let me read it to you. Patient received erythromycin and Hep B in the OR. So in my operating room, because as soon as he let out a little bit of cry, they literally picked him up and rushed him out of the OR, which means they gave him the shot before he started making any noise. So they rushed him out of the OR. If they had given him the shot outside of the OR, it wouldn't say in the OR.
To me, that is when you call 911 and you say someone's just tried to murder my baby.
Yeah. And unfortunately, I didn't know this till 2 years later.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
But that's, I think, where the people have to start coming to, when the stories like this are just...
So that is him.
He's bigger than I thought he'd be.
He was 19 inches.
He's big.
Yeah, that was when they were trying to keep him alive before they transferred him down the mountain. My husband took that picture. He said to me later, he said, I had to take it because I felt like it was the only picture we were ever going to get of him. And I'm glad he took it, because you'll see later why that's an important picture. So the next one, well, not that one. This is the next one. That's when he's in the NICU. If you'll notice how swollen his face is.
Yeah.
He was in the NICU an hour and a half away. He completely swelled up, his whole body, his whole face. Of course, this is after they said he had seizures and needed permission to do a spinal tap, which resulted in nothing. There were no answers from the spinal tap. But he completely swelled up. If you Google Hep B baby swelling, that's what my son looked like in the NICU. Couple days later, they got the swelling resolved. Obviously, he's not swollen up there. That's when he kind of took a turn. His health started improving.
He's a really beautiful baby.
He is very, very pretty boy. And then we didn't even get to hold him until he was about 10 days old because he was hooked up to all this stuff. They never gave us any answers as to what's wrong with him, but this is the first time we held him.
Oh, look at
He
that
is
face.
smiling.
He's smiling despite what they did to him.
They swear babies can't smile at that age, but he was smiling.
Bless him. Look at that pig. Let's take that glare off so they can have a good look. Oh, what a beautiful, what an actually tragic photograph.
Mhm. Yeah.
So that's
And
a
of course,
feeding tube going in.
that's
Are you
a feeding
are you
tube.
able to give any breast milk?
I was pumping at that point, and they said that it was the first 4 or 5 days he actually didn't need any because they were giving him sugars to try to regulate his blood sugar. At that point, I didn't know what that meant, but I was like, well, why not give him my breast milk? At least the colostrum at that point
Sure.
is what it was. It would make more sense, but they said, no, we don't need it. Eventually, I was pumping and giving it to them. They eventually started giving it to him once they started feeding him regularly. So he did get breast milk.
God
in
knows what they gave him before that.
I know. It's scary to me.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
He's a fighter,
So-
your boy.
He is a fighter. It was almost like 10 days in, he decided he wanted to stay. Prior to that, it was almost like he wasn't sure. It was too tough. There was, his body was going through so much. So it was like he decided to stay, and suddenly he was better. And doctors, they still don't know. They said presumed sepsis, the seizures, respiratory distress, hypoglycemia, but they don't know. They don't know. So we get him out. Okay, so the last day that he was in the NICU, the night before, so he was in the NICU for 16 days. On day 15, the NICU came to me and they said, before he leaves, before we discharge him, we need to give him the Hep B shot. And my husband was standing there, and I looked at him and I said, how do you feel about that? And he said, well, it's fine. If they say he needs it, it's fine. And I just wanted to take my baby home. And in the way they phrased it, it sounded like if we don't give him the shot, then he can't go home. So
And you had no idea he'd already had it.
Exactly. And I said, okay, just give it to him. It's fine. So I spent the night in the hospital that night with him, and I didn't see them give him the shot, but I signed for the shot. So the next day we took him home. He was fussy. He never slept. I was exhausted all the time. He had gut issues, diarrhea. I remember sitting every day, like doing the bicycle thing with his legs to get his bowels moving, just so he would have normal bowel movements. The doctor said, you should give him prune juice, and then they also suggested some kind of laxative, and I said, I'm not going to do that.
How old is he?
He's a few months old at this point. I mean, he's an infant, and so I'm moving his legs back and forth, trying to get just his bowels moving, which ended up working. We've done a lot of healing. He's fine now, but when he was a baby, we actually went to the ER one time because his bowel movements were so scary. They had no answers for us either.
It's normal.
Yes, it's normal. So over the next 2 years, he's a tough baby. I'm not doing very well as a mother because it's just, didn't have support. I didn't know what I was dealing with. I was just like, I know this is not this difficult for every other mother. It's my fault. I can't handle it, you know. So during this time period, my own health totally declined. Right after his birth, it just took a nosedive. And I'm going to doctors myself, trying to find answers as to why. I had this whole laundry list of symptoms. I was bruising on my legs. I was depressed. I had panic attacks. It's a huge list. In fact, I took it to one doctor, and he was like, do I really have to record all of this? Because this is ridiculous. And I said, it's what's going on. So one doctor told me I was just depressed. She wanted to put me on antidepressants. I took them. Didn't make me feel any better.
And you're still breastfeeding as well?
No, I only breastfed for 6 months because he could never latch. And at the time, I blamed it on the feeding tubes that he had. Okay, he spent his first 16 days of life with these feeding tubes. That's what he learned to suck on and everything. So the first 6 months, I was pumping, putting it into a bottle, and feeding him, which was also exhausting because a baby wakes up in the middle of the night. I had some in the fridge, so you either have to warm it up or you have to pump on the spot to give the baby food. So we were exhausted. So he only got breast milk for about 6 months, and then he went to normal formula. So,
And has he had any more vaccines at this point?
no.
Okay.
The reason why is because, okay, he spent that 16 days in the NICU. The day after he was discharged, I had to take him to the pediatrician for him to check up on him. And the pediatrician said, okay, come back in 6 weeks. It'll be time for his 2-month visit. And the pediatrician said, he's perfectly healthy at this point. We don't know what was wrong with him. You would never know he was sick, but he's healthy. So right before the 2-month visit, which would be a bunch of shots, he was taking a nap one day, and I like to be totally prepared for stuff. I Googled what the 2-month visit would be like, and of course it says all these shots, and I'm looking over the list of shots, and I'm like, this is a baby who was barely hanging on to life, who spent 16 days being poked and prodded and hooked up to machines, and nobody could give me any answers, and you want me to poke him more with all of this stuff? And so I got on Facebook, and I actually just had a flashback thing on Facebook pop up about 5 years ago when I posted this, where I was like, okay, I can understand a vaccination for polio or something like that, but they're giving a vaccination for chickenpox? This is ridiculous. I had chickenpox as a kid. Why do we need to vaccinate against chickenpox? Well, I got a bunch of my mommy friends commenting on it, one of which is a nurse, and she was like, well, you have to get him his vaccinations, the typical blah, blah, blah that you hear from nurses. But most of my mommy friends were like, delay if you need to, you can pick some and not give others, you have options here. And I was like, it's just ridiculous that they're vaccinating for this. This is not a big deal illness. And then I had another friend who, her son was diagnosed with autism. He was a few years old at this point. And she said, when you have a child diagnosed with autism, you can't rule out anything. And so if you decide to delay your vaccinations for your son, feel free to talk to me, feel free to delay, feel free not to give him his shots. And at this point, it's just friendly conversation. I wasn't thinking anything of it. I was just like, this list is ridiculous. So took him into his pediatrician for the 2-month visit, and I told the pediatrician, I said, I'm not doing the shots today because this just makes me uncomfortable. I had this gut feeling at that point that something wasn't right with this list of shots. That same gut feeling was what saved his life and sent me into the emergency C-section. It was the same feeling. You need to get to a doctor. So this feeling's back telling me this list of shots is ridiculous. And his pediatrician was actually great. He said, okay, sign this paper and it's fine. You can get him later. So I actually pretty much stopped taking him, even though the pediatrician was semi-supportive. It was like, why am I taking him to these visits? I can measure his head, I can weigh him, I can look for any signs of issues. Why do I need a pediatrician for this?
Why do you need to measure his head? The head looks normal on
Exactly.
the baby's body. What are we worried
Exactly.
about?
There's charts all over the internet. Go find what the chart says. If your kid fits, great. That's awesome. So I just decided at that point that we would delay vax. Like, we weren't going to vaccinate him right then, but I figured, later on for school, I didn't have information at this point. So my husband didn't find out until my son was almost 6 or 8 months old that we weren't vaccinating him, because my husband was always working, and I just didn't tell him that we weren't vaccinating him because my husband didn't take him to the doctors, and he was quite angry when I told him we were not vaccinating our son.
Is he medically trained?
He is not, but he was raised in a way of don't follow the rules. People who know more than us know what they're talking about. The authority should be obeyed and doctors are an authority because they have more education than us. So, he's very logical, he's very intelligent, perfect SAT scores. He's a super intelligent guy, but he doesn't, or didn't, he does now, question authority, because the authority knows
Everyone
we need.
stay in lane.
Exactly.
If you're a pilot, you're a pilot. If you're a doctor, you're a
Exactly.
doctor, fireman, policeman, etc.
Right. So he was very furious with me. In fact, we got into multiple arguments, and I told him, fine, if you want to vaccinate our son, then you need to read something. I'm not going to tell you what to read. I'm not going to tell you where to do your research or where to get your information, but you go and do it. And once you show me that you have read something other than, hey, just listen to your doctor, then we can have a discussion on whether or not we vaccinate our son. And a couple weeks later, he came to me and he was like, oh my God, I had no idea. He said, I'm still uncomfortable with some of it, but I support you. And I was like, good. So back to my health. So I'm going to all these doctors because this leads around to figuring out something else that was on here I didn't know until my son was 2 years old. Doctors had no answers for me and my own health, and I kept telling them, look, we were not made to feel like crap all the time. Whether you believe we evolved or we were created, we're not here to feel like crap. So why do I feel like crap, and why does nobody have any answers for me? So I finally found a chiropractor who, he was doing the exam, he could order blood tests and everything, and when I'm telling him all of my issues, he said, so I do have one question for you. Did you, as an adult, at any point, receive a massive dose of vaccinations? And I was like, well, yeah, I was in the military just a few years ago, and I got who knows what, but multiple shots in each arm going down this line. And he was like, yeah, that's the typical story. He said, most adults who come to me whose health just totally declines have had massive doses of vaccinations during their adult years. And it clicked then. And I was like, okay, my health is having issues. I signed for one shot for my son's Hep B. And maybe it was just one shot, but that could have been enough. I mean, at that point, I was already convinced we were not vaccinating him anymore. I was convinced there were issues with vaccinations, but I didn't really think he was vaccine injured. I thought he was just having a hard time. So I went home. That chiropractor taught me about leaky gut. He taught me about viral loads. He tested me. I had chronic levels of Epstein-Barr, which I never had mono as a child. It's the same virus that causes mono, or as a teenager. So because I never had mono, why did I have chronic levels of Epstein-Barr? So I started researching that. Well, MMR is usually contaminated with Epstein-Barr. And so I started treatments in order to break down the protective barrier on Epstein-Barr virus and all this stuff. So that was right around 2 years after his birth. I find this paperwork from the hospital. It's a discharge summary for my son. And I start reading through it. So it says, at birth, patient received erythromycin and Hep B in the OR. And I was like, wait, I didn't sign for that shot that I knew of. I mean, I was just signing paperwork. I said, but I didn't know he got that shot then. I said, I signed for a Hep B shot when he was 15 days old. So Hep B in the OR. Highly suspicious for seizures, hypoglycemia, respiratory distress, possible seizures, possible sepsis. And then you go through and it says healthcare maintenance on 8/16. So he was born 8/3. On 8/16, hepatitis B vaccination given on 8/16. He passed his hearing screens bilaterally. And I'm like, so 13 days old, he got another Hep B shot. And then I'm looking further, and I'm like, I don't see on here where I signed for the Hep B shot right before discharge. So they don't have that recorded here. I don't know if it was, they gave the shot on the 16th and said, oh crap, we didn't get her signature, so we need to get it before she discharges, or if they actually gave him a shot that last day. I have no idea. So he got 2 or 3 Hep B shots within the first 16 days of life. Yes. So I started, when I was treating my own health and treating myself for viruses and heavy metals and leaky gut, I started treating my son that way. So I started at-home treatments for heavy metals, and within a week he started speaking. He hadn't said mommy, he hadn't said daddy. He would make noises, but he didn't say any words. So in a week he started speaking. So I kind of doubled down. The reason I started him on the same protocol I was on is because I figured, hey, if I have all these viral loads and issues from shots that I received before his birth, he was grown in that soup of viral loads and toxins and everything. He's not progressing. It is not going to hurt to try to detox him from heavy metals. So within that week when he started speaking again, it was like, okay, this is real. He has issues with heavy metals. Nowhere else that he got heavy metals other than either from me or his shots. So then my husband had been pointing out over the first 2 years that my son's eye would drift off. He has this one eye that would drift. And I didn't associate it with anything. He had read something that said kids grow out of it. It's quite common. So as I'm researching more about vaccines, I'm seeing the link with the eye issue and vaccinations. And I finally got a picture of it. So you can see this eye is totally off. Now, it doesn't happen all the time. It's when he's sick or stressed or whatever. This was just last November. There's another picture of it.
Yeah, his eyes right off.
Right there.
You just show a little bit closer to the person.
So I had been taking it easy on the vaccine thing, detoxing him, because he was talking. He's delayed, but at least he was talking. And then last November, he suddenly broke out in this awful thing. What is that? Well, my research says that it is a form of eczema. What had happened is he had run into another kid on the playground and developed a bruise. Well, that bruise eventually turned into this. It kind of looks like ringworm. I treated him for ringworm. Doctor said, well, it's not responding to treatments for ringworm, so
it's a nice load more drugs on his face.
Right. Well, at this point, I'm doing natural stuff because I'm like, I know the toxicity of everything. Well, then, while I'm trying to treat for this, he had been trying to climb a tree and scrape the inside of his leg. Well, as soon as that scratch started to heal, it turned into the same thing. And it developed this weird rash-like thing around it. And I said, okay, this is not ringworm. This is not, So my research, it's an autoimmune form of eczema. So that was my last straw. At this point, I've already been diagnosed with celiac disease. So autoimmune is not a surprise in my family. One of my brothers has Crohn's disease. One of my cousins has MS. Another one of my cousins has, it's a heart type autoimmune disease. I can't remember the name of it. But none of my aunts and uncles have any autoimmune diseases, but all of us cousins have it. And then my son develops this thing, and the only answer was an autoimmune type reaction. So this is when I went to my husband and I said, I'm done pretending he's not vaccine injured. I'm done pretending he doesn't have immune system issues. And we're changing everything. So we took him off of all processed foods. This started in November, and in March he broke out in another one, and that's when I was like, I'm done pretending. And I took him off gluten. I took him off processed foods, put him on a ketogenic diet. That went away within a week. In addition, he started speaking sentences because he wasn't speaking sentences at that point. Started speaking sentences, starting to relay ideas that were going on in his head. He still has some challenges, but took him off processed foods and gluten, introduced high fats into the diet because that helps your hormones, that helps rebuild myelin sheaths and all the stuff. And suddenly he's blossomed. So that's his story.
How old is he now?
He is 5. He just turned 5 in August. Oh, there's the leg one. That's the leg one.
That's like a dog bite.
It's not.
Horrible.
Yep. But yeah, that's.
I have to turn the air conditioner on.
Yeah, it's pretty warm.
It's getting a little bit noisy behind, but we can still hear you. How is he doing today? What are we still missing that the vaccines have taken from him? He
just started kindergarten in August, and he, like I said, he's still speech delayed. They just sent home a form that they want to evaluate him for speech. And I knew that was coming. Doesn't surprise me. But he is super clumsy. I've had his ears looked at. I've had his whole system looked at, trying to figure out why he's so clumsy. But there's no real answers. So, excuse me. I remember being at one point, he was probably 3 years old, so barely even speaking. And I went to my husband and I said, it's not fair that I can't talk to my son, you know? And it's not fair that, because you could see him, there was one of the videos I watched of you guys of an autistic boy here on the bus, and he was very high functioning, but he still had some movements in his head when he was trying to convey an idea. And as soon as I saw the video of that child, I was like, that's the exact emotions my son does when he's starting to get frustrated because he can't communicate an idea. And you can see there's something going on there, but he can't figure out how to get it out. And it's so frustrating for him. I can see his confidence level has just been totally hit. Now, the school he's going to is an amazing school. I'm not going to give the name, but it is a nature-based school here in Charlotte.
Nature-based?
Nature-based.
I like that. I don't know what that means, but it sounds good.
Well, basically, they don't sit in desks.
Right.
They are encouraged to learn by experience. So, because of this, his confidence and who he is as a child has just blossomed. In fact, I heard about this school from one of your other stories. She was up in, the mom was up in Chicago, but she lives down here, but she did a story in Chicago, and I was like, nature-based school in Charlotte, where? What is this
That's
school?
wonderful. Peeps helping peeps.
So I Googled it right there, and then I found this school, and I was like, that's the one I'm getting my son into.
Wonderful. That's
yeah.
wonderful. Well, it's heartbreaking.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's such negligence. It's unbelievable. And there's nothing you can do to sue because you're past the time of it, but it's disgusting. But by telling your story, you're really going to, it's a real lesson in you need baby guards in hospital and you need mummy guards as well.
I've already put it out there in Charlotte. If you are pregnant and you don't want to vaccinate your child and you need somebody to back you up in the hospital, I am 100% willing to be there in the hospital and fight off those doctors, because I'm a personality that most people don't try to bully. They just don't. And I am...
Let's put it this way, they've done it once, they're not going to ever do it again.
Exactly. And one thing I do want to say, I know you guys asked the question of what would you tell these parents? The main thing I have to say is it is none of your business what anybody else out there thinks of you. Your job is to protect this child. If your mother, father, second cousin, brother, sister, best friend from high school gives you hell about this, screw them. They don't matter. The thing that matters is your child, and you are there to protect your child. If you have an instinct, go with the instinct. Nobody knows more than you do when it comes to your child. And if people don't like you, oh well.
You got a new family here, new friends.
Exactly. I really could care less what people think about me out there in the real world, because it's about my son, and that's it.
These people love you.
Good, thanks.
Yeah, they're really doing the right thing. I love this woman. Yeah, you're a Pete. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
I'm still devastated we couldn't get this story out on Facebook.
Yes.
Periscope, if any of you could share to Facebook, I'd be really grateful. Tag in, maybe Robin or Riz can put it up on We Are Vaxxed.
I do want to share one last picture of my
Yes,
son.
please do.
I don't know which one. They're all great. We'll do that one.
Oh, wow.
Personality.
And look at his eyes. Not bad.
Nope. See, it's not even all the time he has the eye issue. The eye doctor did say
that's
he
not
has,
bad. That's much better. Still
Yes.
a little bit in on one of the eyes.
But
he
he's
looks so
personality.
cute. You know, how dare they hurt this boy?
I know. Exactly.
You don't mess with this mum, I can tell that.
No. So, yeah. That's it.
Well, you told that story and so well. The Hep B vaccine moving up big time in the league of injury vaccinations.
Well, they get them on day one. How do you know there's anything wrong with
Yeah, but
it?
we're hearing adults with massive damage
Yeah.
from Hep B.
I mean, I honestly kept saying, this is my fault. So I did something wrong while I was growing him. How could I have broken him? It's not my fault.
No, they want you to think that.
I knew something was wrong with my son, but I had no reason to think that he wasn't normally that way until I started fixing him. And then it was like, that's not my son. This is my son. He just had something blocking his ability to communicate and express and live. So,
Well, you're an amazing. Now, is his name on the bus?
his name is on the bus, but I do want to put my name on the bus. We signed his name during the CDC rally last year.
Number 3, probably almost doubled
Yeah, I know.
now in
I
numbers
noticed
since
that the other day.
Thank you so much for speaking so well, and I just feel very safe that you're on our side. Like having you makes everything all okay. Thank you so much. I'm sorry it's so hot in this bus. It really is
but that's
almost.
okay.
It is unbearable. People don't understand.
Yeah, it's really hot.
It is really hot.
I
And
was like,
all
when
the
you were
time.
banning Polly, I was like,
All you need to know is Australia switching in on each, either Stevie or Tay, each interview they're in here learning, recording, and doing their thing. Okay, thank you guys. We're back soon.
good on you for self-educating.